Welcome to History American. This is a space for conversation and reflection where we explore scientific, social, environmental, political, economic, and statistical topics, as well as current events and stories. In every episode, we analyze and break down key events to help us better understand the reality around us. Find us for free on your favorite platform. You can also support this podcast by becoming a supporter of this documentary series or directly via PayPal or cryptocurrency. We accept contributions in Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Solana. You can find all the details in the description of this content. Follow us, share, and join the conversation.
Yes, exactly. And we're really thrilled to have you with us for this.
Yeah, absolutely. And welcome to you, our listener, to this custom deep dive. So to start us off, I just want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine standing in your completely silent bedroom, right? The windows are shut, the doors are locked. The neighborhood outside is just dead quiet.
Just perfectly still.
Exactly. But inside your head, your skull is vibrating to the rhythm of this massive idling diesel engine, and no one else in your house can hear it.
It's just you.
Yeah, just you. The water in a glass on your nightstand is trembling. You start feeling this creeping nausea. Your nose actually begins to bleed, and you realize with absolute dread that this sound is never, ever going to stop.
Oh, it's just a horrifying thought.
It really is. So today, our mission is to open up the stack of research notes you provided and really explore this global, maddening auditory phenomenon that has, plagued communities for decades. But more importantly, we're going to dive deeply into the massive, complex conspiracy stories attempting to explain it.
Right, because when we think of environmental contamination, we usually think of stuff we can see, like smog or oil spills or plastics in the ocean.
Physical things.
Exactly. But what if the most insidious pollution on Earth is entirely invisible, completely untraceable, and it's only experienced by 2% of the population?
Which is such a wild statistic. I mean, it's a terrifying prospect.
It really is. And to set the stage for our deep dive today, we really have to establish the severity of what we're dealing with here. Because we're not talking about a phantom noise or just a mild annoyance or some kind of collective delusion.
No, not at all.
The phenomenon we're analyzing today actually possesses immense kinetic energy. Like you said, it vibrates the water in swimming pools. It causes severe documented physical illnesses.
Yeah, like real medical issues.
Exactly. We're talking crippling dizziness, intense nausea, complete sleep deprivation, and severe anxiety. I mean, it is so terrifyingly persistent and so inescapable that it has literally driven otherwise healthy people to absolute madness.
Wow.
And even, in some documented cases, to suicide.
That's so heavy. So we really are diving into a mystery where the official conventional scientific explanations just completely fall apart. And the truth might be rooted in, highly classified military operations or sophisticated psychological weapons, or maybe even vast catastrophic oversights in our global infrastructure.
Yeah, it goes incredibly deep.
It does. So to truly understand the sheer terror of this phenomenon, we really need to examine its anatomy, right? And I think the best place to start is in the late spring of 1992, in a place that is supposed to be like the absolute antithesis of noise and chaos.
Oh, you're talking about Taos.
Exactly. Taos, New Mexico.
So for those who aren't familiar, Taos is this idyllic, high desert mountain retreat. It has this really rich history as an artist colony. It's essentially a haven.
Yeah, people intentionally move there for the crisp air and the expansive natural beauty.
Right, and above all, the profound peace and quiet. And this is exactly where we meet Bob and Katanya Saltzman.
Right.
They had basically packed up their entire lives, moved to Taos, and built this custom home, explicitly seeking that pristine mountain tranquility.
They were looking for a total escape from the industrial world. I mean, that was the whole point.
Exactly, but instead of the silence they paid for, they found this constant, just maddening, low-frequency drone. They explicitly described it as sounding like a massive, idling diesel truck parked right outside their bedroom window. Just running for hours and then days on end.
Right. But when they actually went outside to look for the truck, there was nothing there. It was just empty high desert. And the really insidious nature of this sound is that it cannot be tuned out. Like, it actually grew louder and more oppressive at night.
Yeah, right when all the ambient sounds of the town, like the wind, the birds, the traffic, when all of that faded away, the hum just took over.
I just want you to imagine that psychological toll for a second. You've invested your life savings into building your dream home in the middle of nowhere. You're looking out over the majestic Sangre de Cristo Mountains, and your living room sounds like a subterranean truck stop.
It would drive anyone crazy.
Exactly. So Katanya Saltzman does what, any rational person would do in that situation. She assumes it has a logical, localized source, like a rogue construction project or maybe a malfunctioning piece of municipal equipment.
Or just a neighbor running a heavy-duty generator, right?
Yeah, right. So she writes this detailed, very frustrated letter to the local newspaper, the Taos News. She's hoping that a little media attention will force the city council to, investigate and shut off whatever machinery is causing this massive racket.
But that's when it gets weird.
Yeah, because when that story runs, Catania discovers this deeply unsettling truth. She is absolutely not alone.
No, the response was just overwhelming. I mean, the moment that issue of the Taos News hit the stands, the newspaper switchboard was absolutely bombarded with phone calls and letters from families all over the region.
Wow, just completely flooded.
Flooded. And they were all complaining about the exact same low-frequency noise. So suddenly, this wasn't just an isolated complaint from Bob and Catania Saltzman. It was a town-wide epidemic.
So it wasn't just them going crazy.
Exactly. When sociologists and researchers eventually came in to conduct, formal surveys, they found that roughly 2% of the town's 4,000 residents could hear it clearly.
Okay, 2%. That is such a fascinating, highly specific demographic slice.
Yeah. It really is. Because it's a small enough percentage that it's incredibly easy for the other 98% of the town, and especially the local government, to just dismiss them as eccentric.
Right, or overly sensitive, you're just hearing things.
Exactly. But 2% of a population all experiencing the exact same highly specific auditory and physiological trauma. From a statistical standpoint, that is enough to prove that it is undeniably real.
Yeah, you can't fake that kind of localized consensus. And the historical data really backs that up, because it proves that Taos, New Mexico wasn't actually the epicenter. This exact same phenomenon had been reported decades earlier.
Oh, absolutely. If we look at the records, a massive outbreak occurred in 1971 in the English port city of Bristol.
Right, the Bristol hum.
Yeah. In Bristol, around 800 people responded to a newspaper inquiry saying they heard the hum, they felt the vibrations, and their health was rapidly deteriorating because of it.
800 people in one city.
Yeah, it was huge. The Bristol outbreak is this really critical data point because it establishes the global historical nature of the phenomenon. I mean, it wasn't just a 90s thing in America.
Right, and the geographical spread just kept widening from there, didn't it?
It did. Over the subsequent decades, it spread across various regions in England and Scotland, and by the time it gained national attention in the U.S., it wasn't isolated to Taos. It surfaced in Hueytown, Alabama. Then it migrated to coastal towns like Nahant and Hull in Massachusetts.
And from the notes you provided, the reports in Massachusetts took on this terrifying new dimension, right? The sound wasn't just a hum anymore.
No, it became a physical kinetic force. Residents out there reported that the low-frequency vibrations were actually powerful enough to visibly rattle the glass window panes in their wooden frames.
Let's focus on those physical manifestations for a moment, because I think it's crucial to understand that this goes way beyond just losing a few hours of sleep.
Right. Oh, completely.
Because I did some research into the physiological effects of low-frequency sounds, specifically infrasound, which operates at frequencies below 20 hertz. And when the human body is exposed to these massive low-frequency pressure waves, the physical manifestations are brutal. The victims in Taos and Bristol weren't just annoyed, their bodies were basically being attacked.
They were deeply debilitated. Victims consistently report this cascade of severe physical symptoms. We're talking about spontaneous nosebleeds. We're talking intense, prolonged nausea, crippling dizziness, and a complete loss of equilibrium.
Which sounds awful. How does a sound wave even do that?
Well, the biological mechanism behind it is fascinating and horrifying. When low-frequency sound waves hit the human body, they don't just, enter the ear canal like normal sound. They actually penetrate tissue and bone.
Wait, really? It goes through your bones?
Yeah. They can physically interact with the vestibular system in the inner ear, which is what controls our sense of balance. So when the fluid in your inner ear is vibrated by an external low-frequency wave, your brain thinks you are physically moving, but your eyes tell you that you're sitting still.
Oh, wow. So it's like a massive sensory conflict.
Exactly. And that specific sensory conflict triggers extreme motion sickness, vertigo, and nausea.
That makes so much sense. Some victims even describe this sensation as feeling like their brain is literally being squeezed inside their skull. It's an actual physiological assault. But the sound itself isn't entirely uniform across all the victims, right? Which I feel like adds another layer of complexity to this whole mystery.
Yeah, it does vary a bit. While many, like Bob and Katanya Saltzman, describe that idling diesel engine sound, others hear something more akin to a low rhythmic heartbeat.
Like a thumping.
Yeah. And then another group describes it as a large electrical generator firing up. And a smaller subset hears a slightly higher-pitched, continuous beep.
So it's not a single monolithic sound.
Right. But regardless of the specific acoustic profile a person perceives, the defining characteristic, like the absolute smoking gun that proves this is an external geographical anomaly, is that it is highly localized.
Okay, that is the crucial detail, because that's what separates this from just being a biological disease, right?
Precisely. Remember how the psychological and physical toll finally became too much for the Salzmans? They basically surrendered. They accepted that the sanctuary they had built was completely ruined.
Which is heartbreaking.
It really is. They packed up a moving truck, abandoned their dream home, and drove away from Taos. And the absolute second their vehicle crossed the county line, the noise instantly vanished.
Instantly.
Instantly. The crushing pressure in their heads just evaporated.
Now, okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Yeah.
Because any skeptical listener is going to immediately jump to the most obvious medical conclusion.
Right, of course.
Isn't this just tinnitus? I mean, if 2% of a town's population goes to a loud rock concert or works in a noisy factory, their ears are going to ring. Couldn't this entire phenomenon simply be a collective, statistically normal flare-up of a really common internal auditory condition?
You know, that is the most common pushback from the metal community. But by looking closely at the physics of sound, we can explicitly disprove that theory.
Okay, walk me through it.
Let's break down the mechanics of tinnitus versus the mechanics of the global hum. Tinnitus is, by definition, the perception of noise or ringing in the ears generated internally by damage to the tiny hair cells in the cochlea.
Right.
Because of the nature of that cellular damage, tinnitus is almost universally experienced as a high-pitched whing, a hiss, or a sharp whine.
Okay.
The phenomenon we are discussing is universally described as a low, subwoofer-like rumble or hum. We are talking about the extreme opposite ends of the frequency spectrum.
Oh, I see. So it's a high-pitched, piercing whine versus a deep, bone-rattling bass that you actually feel in your chest.
Precisely. Furthermore, tinnitus is a biological internal condition. It travels with you. If you suffered from severe tinnitus, that high-pitched whine doesn't magically pause the moment you drive your car across your local zip code boundary.
Right. Bob and Catania left Taos, and the hum stopped. If it was tinnitus, it would have followed them in the car to their next house.
Exactly. And most importantly, tinnitus cannot cause physical kinetic vibrations in your external environment.
Oh,
I mean, an internal neurological misfire in your cochlea does not cause the water in your swimming pool to ripple.
Yeah, that would be physically impossible.
Right, and it certainly doesn't possess the kinetic energy required to rattle the glass panes in your windows. Tinnitus is strictly internal. This phenomenon is demonstrably an external environmental force.
Okay, that completely refutes the tinnitus theory for me.
Okay.
So if we completely rule out a mass outbreak of ear infections, collective hysteria, or tinnitus, we are left with a very stark reality. There is an external environmental cause. And if there is an environmental cause, you would think scientists should be able to bring in their equipment, measure it, pinpoint it, and just shut it down.
You would certainly think so, yeah. But the early scientific investigations into the phenomenon were incredibly frustrating. They were deeply confusing and ultimately just completely fruitless.
Really? How so?
Well, when the situation in Taos reached a boiling point, they brought in acoustic engineers, local scientists, and even representatives from the federal government. One of the key figures leading the scientific charge was Joe Mullins, a mechanical engineering professor at the University of New Mexico.
Now, from what I read, Joe Mullins really tried to tackle this mystery with absolute academic rigor, right? He wasn't relying on subjective human testimony. He wanted hard data.
Right, exactly. He wanted measurable proof. So Joe Mullins deployed a team armed with geophones.
Okay, for our listeners, a geophone is an incredibly sensitive recording device, right? Like, unlike a standard microphone, which measures changes in air pressure, a geophone measures ground movement and velocity.
Yeah, it is meant to capture seismic, acoustic, and electromagnetic energy traveling through the Earth itself.
Okay, so Joe Mullins and his team set these highly sensitive instruments up all around Taos, fully expecting to capture this massive low-frequency rumble that was driving 2% of the population mad. What did they find?
The results of Joe Mullins' highly advanced, rigorous deployment absolute silence.
You're kidding. Nothing at all.
His equipment captured absolutely nothing related to the hum. The only thing the geophones managed to record with crystal clarity was the subterranean scratching of a colony of prairie dogs burrowing a new tunnel.
Prairie dogs. You have millions of dollars of equipment, and you're listening to prairie dogs.
It was a complete devastating dead end. They found no anomalous acoustic sound waves, no seismic tremors matching the descriptions, and no measurable electromagnetic energy in the specific frequencies they were scanning.
Man, I cannot even begin to imagine how maddening that must have been for the residents of Taos. Like, you have this invisible oppressive force ruining your life, causing your nose to bleed, keeping you awake for days. You finally bring in the esteemed experts from the university.
And they tell you it's nothing.
Right. The experts look at their machines and basically tell you that you must be imagining things because they only hear prairie dogs.
It creates a terrible, isolating psychological double bind. I mean, the victims are actively suffering, but the scientific establishment essentially tells them there is zero empirical proof that their suffering has a physical cause in the external world. It inevitably leads to accusations of hypochondria or mass psychogenic illness.
Which just makes the victims feel even crazier.
Yeah.
But the scientific community didn't entirely give up on finding a global explanation, did they?
No, they didn't. Let's jump forward a bit to the period between 2012 and 2013. A massive, well-funded international team of scientists from France, England, and Germany thought they had finally cracked the case.
Okay, what was their theory?
They published these highly publicized findings about something called the Earth's natural hum. To study this, they deployed ocean bottom seismometers deep underwater around Reunion Island, which is a French territory located in the Indian Ocean.
Okay, so they're looking in the ocean.
Yeah, and through these seismometers, they traced an incredibly deep, continuous, ultra-low frequency vibration back to ocean waves crashing over continental shelves and colliding in the open sea.
Okay, so the Earth's natural hum. Is that a real thing?
Oh, it's a very real, very fascinating geophysical phenomenon. The massive, endless kinetic energy of the oceans creates continuous microseisms, these tiny, imperceptible tremors that travel through the Earth's crust.
Okay, but let me guess. If we apply the rigors of geography and physics to this investigation, the ocean wave hypothesis is an absolute dead end for the phenomenon we are discussing today, right? Because of the sheer distance.
Precisely. The ocean wave hypothesis might sound incredibly plausible for a coastal town like Bristol in England, or the outbreaks in Nahant, Massachusetts, because they're right on the water.
Right, but what about the inland towns?
It completely fails to explain the severe outbreaks in deeply inland towns. Let's look at Taos again. Taos is hundreds and hundreds of miles away from any ocean, separated by massive, dense mountain ranges that would dampen any microseismic activity.
That makes total sense. Or consider Kokomo, Indiana, right? Which also experienced a massive outbreak based on the notes. Kokomo is practically in the geographic center of the North American landmass.
Exactly. The crashing of ocean waves in the Atlantic or the Indian Ocean does not explain why the hum is hyper-localized to specific landlocked zip codes while completely ignoring neighboring towns just across the county line.
So the standard acoustic theories fail. The grand geophysical ocean theories fail. That brings us to a major turning point in our understanding of the phenomenon, courtesy of a man named David Deming.
Yes.
David Deming is a geosciences professor at the University of Oklahoma, situated in the city of Norman. And his introduction to the hum wasn't through a research paper. It was a visceral, terrifying personal experience.
It was incredibly dramatic. In the early 2000s, David Deming was lying in bed late at night. The town of Norman, Oklahoma was completely silent. He was just drifting off to sleep when suddenly a light bulb in his bedroom violently exploded.
Exploded, like not just popped.
It didn't just burn out, the glass actually shattered. And immediately after the glass rained down, David Deming began hearing that distinct, low, persistent, idling engine hum.
Wow. And the bizarre occurrences didn't stop with the light bulb bright, because a few nights later, he's jolted awake again.
Yeah, this time, a smoke alarm in his house is going off. But he checks the house, and there's no fire, there's no smoke. There isn't even a strong draft that could have triggered a sensitive sensor.
It's just a completely phantom alarm.
Perfectly coinciding with the return of that torturous low-frequency drone. Now, David Deming is a geosciences professor. He is an academic, a man of empirical science. He absolutely refuses to write this off as a ghost story or a hallucination.
Right, he wants answers. So he dives headfirst into the research, determined to find a physical mechanism.
And his subsequent research changes the entire landscape of this mystery. In 2004, he published a comprehensive, heavily cited 25-page paper in the Journal of Scientific Exploration. He aggregated decades of global data, victim testimonies, and geological surveys, but his core thesis was utterly revolutionary.
What was it?
David Deming suggested that the scientific community had failed to measure the sound because the sound wasn't acoustic at all.
Okay, this is a huge paradigm shift.
Yeah.
If it is not an acoustic pressure wave traveling through the air, what is it?
He proposed that the phenomenon was entirely electromagnetic.
Electromagnetic.
Yeah. David Deming theorized that electromagnetic waves, which are invisible, non-acoustic waves constantly moving all around us, powering our telecommunications, our power grids, our military radar, were somehow bypassing the external ear and interacting directly with human biology.
Wait, really?
He pointed out that while electromagnetic waves do not emit an acoustic sound that a microphone or a geophone can pick up, there is vast scientific evidence that certain human beings can perceive these electromagnetic frequencies as an auditory sensation directly within their own heads.
Oh my gosh, that is the missing link.
Yeah.
That perfectly explains why Joe Mullins and his highly sensitive geophones in Taos only recorded prairie dogs.
Exactly.
Because the microphones and geophones were calibrated to listen for acoustic pressure waves in the air and physical vibrations in the dirt. But if the hum is actually a form of electromagnetic radiation that is bypassing the ears entirely, entering the skull, and interacting directly with the brain or the nervous system, a standard acoustic microphone would never ever pick it up.
It would remain completely invisible to traditional acoustic engineering. The methodology was entirely wrong for the phenomenon they were trying to measure. David Deming also noted that sufferers across the globe often reported what can only be described as intense electrical effects accompanying the hum. Victims reported the physical sensation of their mattresses vibrating with a localized electrical current, or, like in his own harrowing case, exploding light bulbs and inexplicably malfunctioning electronics.
So this theory firmly and permanently shifted the investigation from the realm of acoustics into the invisible world of electromagnetism.
It really did.
And just as David Deming's electromagnetic theory starts gaining serious academic traction, the phenomenon escalates in a massive, undeniable way. Like, this isn't just a single light bulb anymore. Let's travel to the year 2011. To the city of Windsor, Ontario, located in Canada.
Yes, this is where we encounter the story of Mike Provost.
Right. Mike Provost is a retired insurance salesman. He has worked his whole life, he is enjoying his retirement, and he's expecting quiet, peaceful mornings working in his garden. Instead, he wakes up one spring morning to what sounds like the distant, low, threatening rumble of an approaching thunderstorm.
But the storm never arrives. The sky over Windsor is perfectly clear, but the thunder inside Mike Provost's head never stops. He spends hours, then days, and eventually weeks, subjected to this endless droning rumble.
Which has to be so exhausting.
It completely shatters his concentration, it induces severe nausea, and it completely ruins his ability to sleep. But Mike Provost is resourceful. He doesn't just suffer in silence, and he doesn't just write a letter to the local paper. He utilizes modern technology. He goes online.
He starts a Facebook group. And this is where the modern, digitally connected era of the phenomenon really takes shape. Because within a shockingly short amount of time, Mike Provost's Facebook group amasses over 1,000 local Windsor residents.
Over 1,000 people.
Over 1,000 people living in the same geographic area, all suffering from the exact same nausea, the same crippling sleep deprivation, the same low-frequency thunder. Mike Provost and his newly formed community begin rigorously documenting everything.
They record the intensity of the vibrations 24 hours a day. They compile detailed medical testimonies. They map out the severity based on street addresses. They essentially build an undeniable, crowdsourced mountain of data.
And that massive mountain of highly organized data finally forces the Canadian government to act, right?
Yes.